Hi, I'm Lauren Brooks,
Hello, I'm Anthony Gabriel.
and this is the RIM Report. Reminder that 2019-2020 FAFSA is open now. File your FAFSA by March 1st for priority consideration. Shepherd University's Relay for Life is holding a guaranteed parking spot raffle. Tickets are on sale until December 6th. Tickets cost $5 for a single ticket and $20 for 5 tickets. Cash, check, and card will be accepted. If interested, visit the Student Engagement Office. Additional details are on the calendar. The Creative Writing Club is partnered up with Sigma Tau Delta to hold a creative writing character development workshop on Tuesday, November 29th from 6 to 7 p.m. Activities will focus on character reaction, development, and introductions. Sans Mercy editors will also be there to answer questions about the submissions to the literary magazine. The entrance fee is only 50 cents.
Finally, on Saturday, December 5th, there will be a charter bus trip going to New York City. Transportation is provided via charter bus that includes Wi-Fi. The bus will depart at 4:15 a.m. and arrives in New York City at 9:45 a.m. and departs at 7:30 p.m. Students may purchase a seat for $40. Faculty, staff, and community members must purchase a seat for $60. Tickets are now on sale in the Student Center Game Zone.
This has been Lauren Brooks.
This is Anthony Gabriel.
Thank you for tuning in with us. This has been the RIM Report.
Please welcome Professor Samuel Greene of the Department of Political Science and Global Studies here at Shepherd University. Prior to coming to Shepherd, he worked at the National Defense College in the United Arab Emirates, the Near East South Asia Center for Strategic Studies in Washington, D.C., and Howard Payne University in Texas. So, Professor Greene, what do you think of our elected officials this term?
Well, first, thanks for having me on. In West Virginia, we have at the national level, Joe Manchin runs a much closer race than might have been expected, and of course, big wins for Republican candidates in all three of the House districts. So this suggests that West Virginia remains a pretty conservative state, and it's difficult for Democrats to make headway seeking statewide office. On the other hand, locally in Jefferson County, we have a lot of wins for candidates on the left, both for the State House of Delegates, for County Commission, in large part driven by local politics such as the Rockwell issue. So locally, we have certainly a spot for candidates on the left to win on the basis of local issues.
So, Amendment 1 was a hot issue this election in West Virginia and was voted yes by a mere 3.3% of voters, which is roughly 1.05% of the population of West Virginia. Do you think that such an issue that was won by such a small margin will show up again in other ballots?
I think you may see it again later, but not immediately. At least strategically, I think it would be unwise to immediately try to again amend the Constitution. I think people who were opposed to Amendment 1 instead will probably focus on lobbying the state legislature who will be responsible for implementation. So looking at pressure on legislatures not to unduly restrict abortion in West Virginia. And I think a lot of the discussions over the next few years will be what is the legislature going to do? And of course, remember that until cases are brought before the Supreme Court, Roe remains the settled law.
So this midterm election proved to be very interesting for the whole country. A lot of firsts with Jared Polis as the first openly gay man elected as a governor, Deb Haaland and Sheriff Davids sharing the first role of first Native American women elected into Congress, and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar sharing the first role of first Muslim women elected in Congress, and several first states as well. What are your thoughts on the potential diversification of legislators?
Well, I think it's a great thing for two reasons. First, I think it's good for all Americans to be able to look at their elected officials and say, I can see myself being represented in our legislature. I could see myself maybe becoming one day a member of Congress, a governor. So I think that's a fantastic thing. I think secondly, there's at least some evidence that more diverse legislatures tend to make more consensus policies and maybe are more interested in minority rights. And then I'd also like to point out that diversity may be race, it may be gender, it may be sexual orientation, but there's also diversity in background. So for example, I'm pretty excited about the election of people like Alyssa Slotkin and Abigail Spinnaker. So Michigan 8 and Virginia 7. Both of them are women who served in the CIA, and I think are giving representation to the increasing number of women who are serving in the armed forces or in other national security positions. So I think that's exciting. You know, we elect a lot of lawyers and business people to elected office, so diversifying that, I think, is also another important element of diversity.
So another unusual occurrence of this past election was brothel owner Dennis Hoff was elected despite being dead for nearly 3 weeks prior to the vote. Some believe that he was elected due to uninformed voters. Others believe that he was only to secure the seat for another Republican to take his place. What do you believe?
Sure. So I think first, it's actually maybe not as unusual as it might seem. You know, for example, in 2010, Jenny Oropeza was reelected to the California State Senate after she'd passed away for a couple of weeks. But really, I think it comes down to the fundamentals of the district. So the Nevada 36th State Assembly District is a very red district. The Republican almost always gets 60% or more. In fact, in the last election, there wasn't even a Democrat running. So I think almost no matter who runs with an R next to their name, they were going to get elected in that district. And I think that really explains the result.
So how do you think the Democratic Party will proceed having taken the majority in the House, and what will this mean for investigations, particularly into prior claims about investigating Trump and Kavanaugh?
I think we're going to see a lot of investigation. I think we're going to see the president's tax returns released, or a fight over the release of the tax returns. And we're going to see what we might call investigation theater. The Democrats leading an investigation, the administration challenging that. That has the potential really to bring a lot of gridlock to Washington. I mean, we often perceive Washington to be suffering from gridlock anyways, but this could accentuate it. On the other hand, it's important to know, of course, the House has a tremendous amount of budget power, right? The budgets have to originate in the House, which means that really nothing can be done without consensus. So the question is, while on one hand the Democratic House is investigating the president, can the Democrats also reach some sort of consensus with Republicans? That's possible. For example, the House might put forth an infrastructure plan that sounds a lot like things President Trump was campaigning about. But you're also going to see a lot of really partisan rhetoric over the investigations. So whether there can be cooperation after that, I think, is doubtful. So if I have to predict something, it's going to be 2 years of lots of partisanship and lots of gridlock in Washington. That's my positive, exciting, uplifting prediction of the night.
So thank you, Professor Greene. Do you have any other final thoughts for our viewers?
Sure. So first, I will say I'm excited by the high youth turnout. So in previous midterm elections, you'd get typically youth turnout, which depends if you want to include me in the youth vote or not, but let's stick with 19 to 29, right? So you typically get around the low 20%. So preliminary results suggest 31 or so percent of young voters turned out. On one hand, that's good. It's encouraging to see more young people really getting involved in politics. On the other hand, we expect around 49% of total voters, so about 50% turnout. So obviously, younger voters are still underrepresented. So I think it also means that we have work to do. We have work to get more and more young people involved in politics, because when younger people tend to vote frequently, then political figures are going to take greater account of young people's particular political interests. And I'd also say that's a challenge for us as a community in Shepherd. Are we at Shepherd doing everything we can to bring young voters to the polls? And in the next national election, are we going to have a really high turnout here at Shepherd? So that's a couple years away, but that's my challenge to the community.
Well, this was Matthew Geis here with Samuel Greene, and thank you for joining us at the Ram Report.